What was that monologue in your own mind like?
It's funny. It's not usually like when I'm lying in bed. It's usually like when I'm like going home from work. And this was in
Like the
Singapore.
decompress.
Yes. And sometimes I would walk home and I'll be crying, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, what am I doing? Like, this is crazy.
What,
But
when you say you were crying, like what was it that was making you? Was it the amount of work? Hello, chefs. This is Chef's PSA, and I'm your host, André Natera. Today, my guest is Laila Bazahm, chef owner of Siti and El Raval in Austin, Texas, one of the hottest chefs in Austin right now. We're going to talk about her career in finance and transitioning into some of the hardest kitchens, including Mugaritz and working for Joël Robuchon, opening restaurant, securing funding, and her love for wine. If you want some insider knowledge on how to open your first place, listen to this episode.
changing your voice or
So, what people don't know is off camera. Someone just said I have a podcast. I have a face for television, though, right? I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah, you do.
yeah, I have a
Yes.
No, come on, you're making me feel bad. I have a podcast voice. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I guess now that I'm a podcaster, authoritative. Yeah. Well, I used to be so afraid of speaking publicly. And I used to have a boss that encouraged me every month to go up on stage. We have to do a book report. So I'd have to go and do a book report and, whatever book they happen to tell us to read. And then I'd have to do not just a book report, but I'd have to do a slideshow presentation.
Yeah.
And the reason they made us do the slideshow presentation is because this boss that I worked for at the time was very business-like. Like he worked in, a long time in New York City. He was rubbing elbows with whoever you needed to rub elbows with in the business world. And his thing was like, if you don't know how to speak publicly and you don't know how to give a presentation, you're not going to ever be able to command the room and move up. And so that's why I got started in this. But actually, I was terrified. I'm like the most reclusive person around.
Well, that's a great training then, right?
Are you shy? Do you like talking publicly?
So I like conversations, right? I
Yeah.
love small groups. I love that. But talking in public, I've done my share of like presentations, obviously, right? I worked in finance before. So like, yeah, I had to do that. Do I like it? I also went to business school. So, you really have to do all of the presentations and all of that. But do I love it? No, I don't. Just to be honest.
No.
And it's not like I'm really excited or, you know how some people like get their energy from like that, like from just being with other people, just being the center of attention or, I don't like, I'm the opposite. So
It's funny because I'm so used to speaking either on the podcast or presenting on stage. And so recently I was presenting sitting down. I had to
Okay.
present something, but I was presenting sitting down to a group and I struggled so hard just because of the vantage point. I'm so used to standing up and doing it.
That's interesting. Wow.
But what I find interesting is that you have this finance background. And not only do you have this finance background at a pretty good high level, but then you transitioned into the chef world at a very high level as well. And you were telling me this the other day. I thought it was crazy when you were telling me. You said that you went from being a manager in finance to like working at Mugaritz as your first ever chef job.
Yes.
What was that like? First of all, what were you thinking? And why did you think that I know nothing? I'm going to start at Mugaritz, which at one point was arguably one of the best, or still is one of the best restaurants in
It
the world.
still is. Yeah. Well, I mean, I love Spain and I love San Sebastián. It was always my favorite food destination, right? So I would always go there, even when I was like working in finance, right? I was based in Dubai, so it was easier for me to go there. And Mugaritz was not the only place that you really have to knock on doors to like get this opportunity.
What were the
right?
doors? What were
I
the
went
three
to-
doors that were like, these are the ones I want to get into?
Well, I went to Arzak and flat out they said no. It wasn't just once though. Like I went a couple of times and it was always a no. And I'm like, okay, I need to like look for other places. I went to like some of the pincho bars there too, like just because they cook really well. And I just wanted like this real life experience. How is it working in a restaurant, right? And then I went to Nineo, which is like one of their restaurants, Mugaritz, right?
Uh,
And that's where actually like I started in Nineo. And then they move you to their different, they have 5 restaurants back in the day. I don't know now, but they move you around. So I guess I just got really, really lucky.
I mean, so many people wish they started at Mugaritz, right? It's funny. I used to have a girl that worked for me, and she, very young in her career. I remember she was 18 years old. And then she went to go work at French Laundry, and then I think she worked at Alex Atala's spot in Brazil. I can't remember the name of Dom, I think, right?
Yeah.
No. And shortly after that, she went to the Netherlands, and she worked in this very experimental cuisine type restaurant. She's the sous chef over there. By the time she's 21, she's already worked in 3 of the best restaurants in the world, and she hated it. Like, she's like, I don't want to do this anymore. And she left, and I think she designs video games now. But I find it interesting sometimes when you start at a very high level, it's very difficult sometimes to go backwards, right? When you're starting at the top, it's like, we used to joke around, say, like, if your first boyfriend is Brad Pitt, like, where are you going to go after that? Or, if your first girlfriend's Angelina Jolie, or, fill in the blank, whoever's hot right now. Sydney Sweeney, that's who it is. If your first girlfriend's Sydney Sweeney, where do you go after that? But how was it starting at a Mugaritz 3 Michelin, right? 2 Michelin?
2. It was 2
Michelin, yeah.
back then.
And then where do you go after that? Because I got to imagine it's a culture shock. So much about finance, and you're walking in, and I'm sure you had a passion for food, but.
Well, I think like the training was really different because like you said, right? Like you have to be like, the chefs there were like world class, right? Their work ethic, their talent, it's just a different kind of mentality, right? And they're always like, it's their best game every day, right?
Yeah.
And they were doing crazy things, right? That was, and still, they still do, right? Until now. And it's something that's not like, I can't think of any restaurant in the world that's like it, right? And so to learn from those people, like that's just, to put yourself against those people, that's just a different challenge,
Yeah.
And one thing that I really learned from these kitchens, Nineo, Mugaritz, like in San Sebastian, is like what you tolerate is your standard, right? Like, it's okay to say it's not okay because it's not, right? So I kind of like, I still hear that sometimes when I like want to like close my eyes and pretend not to see something that was wrong. Like, but I hear that, and it still affects me. And that's one thing that I really carry with me until now. And I'm just grateful that I got that training,
It's interesting. I was talking with someone the other day about one thing that I think people don't think about when you're moving up in a very high-end restaurant, whether we're talking a restaurant that's at the top of the world's 50 or a 3 Michelin or 2 Michelin even, or anyone that's just pushing for excellence at the highest level that they could possibly push themselves. When you're a cook there and you're moving into a sous chef position, and I'm not talking about the chef owner, I'm just talking about you're working your way up the ladder. There's a couple of things that are rewarded. What's rewarded is attention to detail, your ability to have attention to detail and to spot errors in other people.
For sure.
Right? So it's your ability to not only notice your mistakes, but to notice the mistakes of others, with an exacting eye.
100%.
And then it's your ability to call them out. Mm-hmm. So you reward the person that's willing to call them out because you have to let nothing pass if it's not on the level. And you have to have this extreme eye for detail. So when people say that a lot of these chefs are kind of assholes, I mean, we're rewarding the people that have the most attention to detail and have the most confidence to call you out on it, right?
Absolutely.
And so there is a certain person that moves up very well in that system.
Totally.
I think, and not all kitchens are the same. So I hate to say like all kitchens are like this, but the good chef that's recognizing the talent of the up and coming cook and the up and coming sous chef that has the attention to detail and the confidence to call people out on their mistakes also needs to teach them how to do it.
Absolutely.
right?
Yes. Yes.
Right. So that they're not just saying, "Hey, you idiot." It's like, "Hey, let me
Absolutely.
explain to you why this is the way
Right.
we do it, and this is
And
why it's unacceptable."
exactly. And like you said, I was nobody, right? Like I was a stagiaire, right? So they would give you like the menial stuff, like cleaning oysters or peeling potatoes, but there's a certain way of doing things, and like nothing is too small, right? For you to not really put your attention. And this is the reason why I probably thrive in in kitchens like Joël Robuchon. That's also like a very hard kitchen to.
No, known for being a little bit picky.
Yes. Well, that's his thing, right? Attention to detail. And again, like I'm just grateful that I got that training. Not that like I still I started late in this game, right? I know that. And I can never compete with the chefs who trained like when they were 14, 15. Like it's just different, right? I still work on my craft, on my technique every day, but I feel like sometimes it's not just the talent, it's your attitude, it's your drive, right? Like, do you really want to be better every day? I think that's more important than like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I can really do everything, you know?
Kitchens are brutal right now. Everyone knows it. Fewer people on the line, margins tighter than ever, and somehow the expectations keep going up. There's just no room to miss anymore. I was talking to a chef recently who said the biggest stress wasn't the volume, it was the mental load. Babysitting food, timing everything perfectly, trying to be everywhere at once. And that's where equipment matters more than people want to admit. Rational's technology comes up a lot in those conversations. The iCombi Pro, the iVario Pro, overnight roasts that don't need to be checked, custom programs for all your recipes, consistency without hovering, completely automated cleaning, monitoring everything from your phone, the list goes on. And what really buys you the headspace? Less standing over pans and more time to lead the kitchen instead of constantly putting out tiny fires. When you're down a cook, when the prep list is rough, when the production ramps up, think rational. So I know from Spain you spent some time in Singapore.
That's right. Yeah.
And in Singapore you were with Joël Robuchon.
Sure. Yeah.
How many years of cooking had you had under your belt before you walked into that kitchen?
So, not much, to be honest. So in Singapore, I started with a restaurant called Saint Pierre, which is also like a French fine dining. And then after that, I went to a Japanese kaiseki restaurant, and that was really hard because Japanese chefs are very particular, you know? So by then, I've been probably cooking for like 3 years.
Uh-huh.
And then I went to Robuchon and I got promoted as a chef de partie, which obviously like you're responsible for a station, right? So it's really hard. It's almost like being a chef de cuisine of a particular station. So you get everything. Like you get yelled at by the chef de cuisine, by the executive chef. So the way that Robuchon works is that you have like a chef de cuisine, and his boss technically is the executive chef, and then every quarter Mr. Robuchon would come with his brigade of French chefs, and it's really nerve-wracking, if you can just picture that.
I can, and the restaurants that you've mentioned, you're talking about a high-end French, Japanese, Spanish, and then Joël Robuchon. When you were coming from a finance background, and you're not. It's not that you're a teenager at this point. You have some life experience. But were there ever moments in there that you thought, what am I doing?
Yes, absolutely.
Like, why am I doing this? Why am I? Because you don't have to share those stories, but I'm sure you have them.
Yes.
I'm sure there were moments where you're like, why am I doing this? Why am I putting up with this?
Like I said, like it's tough. And like in Spain, I was not paid, right? And yet like you have to work from 9 a.m. until 2 a.m. sometimes, right? That's just the rhythm. And it's like, but I want this, right? So I'm committed to this. And were there times when I wanted
hold on.
to?
You want what? You said, I want this. What
I
is it
want
that you
this
want?
life, this career.
This life, yeah.
Right? I at least that's what I thought, right? And initially I gave myself like a year to like really decide if this is really for me or not. And it just filled me in a different way. You know what I mean? Like there was something that made me feel alive, and yes, it's tiring. Yes, it's draining physically, mentally, everything. You know what I mean? Yes, it's not that financially rewarding, but you know what? it gives me something that I can't get from my previous job. So I just decided to stick with it, you know?
When was the time that you were laying up in bed thinking like, I don't want to go to work tomorrow? And you decided, you know what, I'm going to go to work tomorrow. What was that monologue in your own mind like?
It's funny. It's not usually like when I'm lying in bed. It's usually like when I'm like going home from work. And this was in
Like
Singapore.
the decompress.
Yes. And sometimes I would walk home and I'll be crying, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, what am I doing? Like, this is crazy. But
When you say you were crying, like what was it that was making you, was it the amount of work? Because I'm assuming like you had a ton of things that needed to get done at exacting details, or was it the way people acted? Was it you pushing yourself because you wanted to be at their level? What was the thing that was pushing you to cry?
so I think it's a combination of all of that, right? So the environment is really, this was back in 2014, right? So it was different, right? It was, I would say, toxic, you know, but it's their, like what you said, it's their way of like pushing people to be their best, right? Like, and, you know, they've been trained that way, right? So if you were trained that way, you would train other people that way too, right? So it's that accountability to be at your best, to really push people to really put out 100%, you know, their best every day. And it was that maybe pressure, and also like thinking imposter syndrome too, like maybe thinking that what am I doing here? I'm not even that great, you know? Like what did I do in my life, you know? And sometimes you feel worthless sometimes, you know, I'm not gonna lie. But you know, when you look back, it's really a great training because now I almost feel like I can do anything, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm grateful I did that.
Wow. I mean, it's a pretty unique experience. I'm curious, what does day one look like when you walk into Joël Robuchon's kitchen?
Well, you just have to keep up, right?
Yeah.
Keep up with, I remember I was training with another chef de partie,
Yeah.
and he will just tell me like, well, we have to do it. You have, they make their list, by the way, right? It's a very old school kitchen in that way. Like, if you think about it, they don't really have systems in place, like, but they know what they're doing because these are the best of the best, right? So they will make their own list. You know, they're responsible for their stations. And you have a list like this long, and you have 3 hours to prepare it with such, you know, detail, right?
Yeah.
You have to bring
The little dots
your
of caviar on everything, right?
and I remember there was this dish. It's a ratatouille dish, and you have to have a ruler to make it because you have to measure the zucchini, everything that goes into it, and it needs to be the exact size for everything, you know? And I was like, and they keep like yelling at you and pushing you, but obviously like you need time to make that right, you know? And you're like, oh my God, this is crazy. And so the next day I was scheduled to come. We were doing dinner service. So I remember that week, like I was scheduled to like start at 1 p.m., but I came at 9 just because I wanted to finish my list. You know what I mean? And I kept doing that. And the chef was like, what are you doing here? Well, I mean, you know, like I
Yes.
have to finish my prep list. Otherwise I'll be in the weeds. Right?
Right. And the pressure that you're putting on yourself to not let the team down,
Yes.
because you have this, it's not just a matter of letting them down. It's also, this is your circle.
Yeah.
These are the
for
people
sure.
that you see every day. These are the people who you're afraid are judging you every day, right?
Right.
Wow. What are some of the biggest cultural differences between kitchens in Asia versus what you've seen in the United States?
Kitchens in Asia,
Yeah.
they're very competitive, very competitive. Like, you know, like when I was in Singapore, it's mostly Koreans, obviously like Singaporeans, Malay, you know, some people from China, like, and Filipinos too. Like their work ethic is crazy. So you kind of have to match that, right? And it's like,
They want nothing else but to be great at that.
yes.
Yes.
And they are super competitive, and they really want to be the best, right? They want to be better than you. You can tell, right? And for me, it's like I just want to be better. You know what I mean? Because like that's just the way I look at this. But
Mhm.
for them, it's a different game. It's really on, you know. Whereas here, I feel like here people are more collaborative and they're more like very based on like systems, you know what I mean? Like, oh, this is the way we do things. You know what I mean? There it's totally different, you know. I'm not saying that they're not as competitive. There are some competitive folks out here too. Maybe like New York would be different, right? But in Austin, that's basically like what I see, right?
Mhm.
People are totally more laid back. They still want to produce great food, but they're not gonna like come at like 8 a.m. if they don't have to. You know what I mean? If they're
Right.
not, you know what I mean? It's just a different
Yeah, yeah.
mindset.
And yes, times have changed very much so in how kitchens are run, but also what the expectation of the cooks coming in. If if you could look at some of these great restaurants that you were at, and then you take that knowledge to where you're at now, what are some of the things, like the culinary practices that you learned? And I hate to keep referring to Robuchon or Mugaritz, but those are the household names, right?
Sure.
That you now incorporate, whether it's technique wise, or system wise now, or recipe wise, or whatever the
Sure.
case may be. What are some of those things that have stuck with you forever?
Um, well, Rubuchon, it's my love for sauces,
Yeah.
obviously. The way you layer flavors. Um, the way you handle meats, you know. At Robuchon, all of their meats are sous vide,
All of
because
them.
all of them,
Yeah.
including the quail, you
Yeah.
know. And that's how I learned how to like treat.
So is it sous vide and then it's just finished,
Correct,
a
yeah. But
rosé?
you still need
Yeah.
to cook it. You still need to, you know what I mean, right?
Hmm.
Like they have, if you've been to like any atelier in the world, they have like this big plancha, you
Hmm.
know, and most of the stuff is cooked there, right? But yeah, like um, Mugaritz, it's a totally different cuisine, right? It's very modernist. It's
Hmm.
Do I use any of the things that I learned there? No, I don't.
No.
But it like forces you to like open your mind to things, right? It's
Uh-huh.
a very cerebral cuisine and there's no way that I can do that on my own. You would need a team of chemists and, you know, like
Yeah.
special equipment and all of that. I I love the use of science in cooking because cooking is science. I believe that it's chemistry, right? But I feel like right now what I do and actually this is the main lesson that I learned in cooking in those kitchens is that as a chef you really need to find your voice, you know, like your identity. What is your identity? Because they would never ask you to like, I feel like they would respect you if you can come up with your own dish, you know,
Hmm.
with your soul in it, you know, not just because you can copy anything from Robuchon, it will be a great plate. But do you really want that? Are you really going to be proud of that?
Right.
No, right? So I think like it's very important to like just put your identity out there, you know, cook it right, right? Use great ingredients, um, great techniques, but it's you, right? People can tell
Yeah.
that it's you.
It's interesting that you said that everything is sous vide. Do you still cook that way now?
Yes, I
Yeah.
mean,
So
because it's
ahead of time, your proteins are all always.
not all, like especially for Asian Southeast Asian cuisine, right? Like I don't always, but most of it, yes.
Mhm.
You know, like because it's easier, it's idiot proof,
Do you,
right?
do you have a specific, because I mean, when you start talking to chefs, everyone's going to tell you, you're doing it wrong. No matter how good it is, they're going to say, oh,
Sure.
no, you're supposed to do it this way. What is your process from, if you could walk us through a very simple, whether it's chicken or whatever it is that you use often for sous vide, from zero to finish?
Yeah. So let's say any protein, right? Like could be a pork belly or
Let's go with
short
pork belly.
rib. Yeah, pork belly. So I would usually like cure it first
Hmm.
and then use a special paste. Especially like for Southeast Asian cuisine, this is like it's still the way that you're supposed to cook a traditional dish, right?
Hmm.
But you're not obviously like cooking it on sous vide. You're probably cooking it on in a spit or something, right?
Hmm.
Charcoal, grilling it or something like that, or in a curry. But I still prefer to like respect those techniques, like using traditional paste and then cooking it on sous vide and then finishing it on our charcoal grill, for
Hmm.
example.
Hmm. And when you cook it sous vide, are you cook at a hotter temperature longer, shorter?
Yeah, low temperature for a long time,
Yeah.
for 12 hours or sometimes even 24 hours.
Hmm. And then do you have like a rest chill method that you
Correct.
typically go
Yes.
through? Yeah.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
So, obviously, like you put it in like ice bath,
Hmm.
and you always need to like measure the or have the temperature ready. And we have a log too for that
Hmm.
because that's technically like our HACCP
Sure. Yeah.
method, or system, if you call it.
Do you have a rule of thumb? Like some people say, in the ice bath until it reaches a certain temp, or
Yes,
in the
that's
ice
right.
bath until, you know, however long it was cooked for a certain percentage.
No, until it reaches like below 40, and then we can like
Yep.
put in the walk-in then and basically use that for probably like 2 days. We don't usually like, cook a lot of things
Hmm.
because we don't want to like keep it like in the walk-in for a long time, right?
Hmm. And then when you're getting ready for service, and again using the pork belly or
Sure.
beef short rib or something like that, you've taken out, you already maybe pressed it or portioned it, and then on the pickup, it's just whatever. So are you picking it up from room temperature? Are you picking it up from cold? What
From
is
cold.
from cold?
Yeah, from cold temperature. And then I have a mi brasa at City. I love it.
What is that for people that don't know?
Yeah, so it's a charcoal oven.
Uh-huh.
It's like Josper.
Yeah.
I think Josper gets like it's a more known brand, right? But it does the same thing. And the folks actually were from Barcelona. I know them, but like I just love the product. I've used it in Barcelona when I had a restaurant there, and so I wanted to put it at El Raval, but I just can't because it's not going to be like our system can't support it, but it can at CT. So
Mm. Um, so from cold you go to finishing, and then that's it,
yeah,
sauce, whatever.
that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah,
When you're composing your dishes, and now we're moving forward a little bit
sure.
because you have all this training that you got abroad, but at a certain point it becomes your identity, right? When you're composing your dishes, and again, what sort of, and maybe we could use the pork as the example. What sort of flavors are you going for? How do you balance the dish before you say this is now ready for guest consumption?
Well, just to give an example, like CT, for example, obviously, like we draw from like traditional dishes, right?
Hmm.
Like let's say the pork, right? It's babi guling, which is the roasted pork in Indonesia, right? Or the lechon in the Philippines. So I know how that looks like and how it tastes like. Do we cook it the same? No, we don't. But we try to stay true to the flavor by like again preparing the same paste that
Hmm.
they use for to prepare this dish, and all of the sauces and accoutrement that
Hmm.
comes with it are with the dish, right? But obviously, like we prepare it with some lettuce wrap, so it's lighter. It's not just, you know what I mean? Like it's
Hmm.
sometimes it could be really heavy to eat it with rice, for example, or like the way that they eat it in Bali, for example, or even in the Philippines. But I wanted it to be like bites. You know what I mean? Like you could wrap it, you could put some pickles for some, acidity and balance, and then we usually serve it with ketchup mayonnaise, which is like a sweet soy and lime. So the sweetness and the acidity from that sauce. When you pair it with the namjim, which is like a spicy fish sauce lime condiment, it's great. I love it.
Yeah.
And yeah.
When you're creating dishes for either restaurant, um, how much of it is exactly like the tradition flavor wise, maybe I know you're using some techniques like sous vide and whatnot, but flavor wise, are you going for I want this to taste the same way it did in the country of origin, or do you adjust it more so for for the in this case Austin, Texas palate?
Right. I guess like it depends on the dish. We have some dishes like my mom's kare kare, which is an oxtail and peanut sauce. Like that's a
Mm.
traditional Filipino dish, and we even serve it in a clay pot, right? That's
Mhm.
I didn't do anything to like, make that dish mine. I just asked my mom like, how do you make this? And I tried to
Yeah.
replicate it, right? And I actually braise it, like or cook it in the pot like my mom, right? I never touch it. I never put it on the sous vide because I feel like I need to stay true to this, right? It's like my tribute to her, right? Um, Now I have a dish on the menu that's like hiramasa crudo, and we serve it with cold tom kha broth. That traditional? No, it's not. Not at all, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I would say the
but it's cool.
flavors.
Yeah, but it's cool.
But I think like the flavors
Yeah,
are there. It's cold,
yeah.
that's a hot soup, but I think it's fun to make. I think it's like it's very creative. And I feel like for me, I get to play with the flavors that I love and
Mhm.
present it to my audience in such a way that
Do you pull? So you're talking about a lot of Southeast Asian flavors. You're talking Indonesian, Filipino, Thai. Do you have when you're writing menus, either with yourself or your team, do you have like creative guardrails? How far outside do you go from them?
I don't set guardrails, unfortunately. Like I don't.
No.
For as long as it tastes great,
Yeah.
um, yes, we'll go for it. And I don't really do a lot of R&D,
Uh,
like I play,
yeah.
right?
Like, what does that process look like when you're coming up with new items to go on the menu? Who's involved, and how does the process go?
Right now it's just me, right? Because I
Right.
really don't, I mean, I have cooks,
I have plenty of ideas.
right? And that's the thing too, like I don't really have any Southeast Asian person
Yeah.
at City yet, right? Maybe one day we'll have them and they're welcome to join me. But yeah, so how does that process look like? I've done a lot of travels in Southeast Asia. Like that's one of the things that I love
So
actually.
it's like you could do it with your eyes closed.
I don't think so. Like I would, I would do a lot of like tests,
Uh,
I guess, right? But that's also one thing that I learned from Robuchon. Like my chef before, he would just, he's a very talented chef, obviously, but he will just like come up with a special, in like 10 minutes, he will have an amazing dish. Will he ever like make it again? Probably not. But like, that's one thing that I really admired
uh,
from him, and I'm like, sometimes I really want to do that, but I try not to because I know that it's it's great for me, right? Creatively, it's great. But is it great for my team? It rattles them, right? Sometimes I do it for fun for
mhm.
when I'm cooking for friends. But I try not to do it as much, and I try to plan ahead just for the sake of my team because I don't want them to like get
How do you
rattled.
how do you go about teaching? I don't know the cooks in your kitchen, but let's just for the sake of conversation, American cooks who might not have a palate that's accustomed to some of these Southeast Asian flavors or whatever the case, even Spanish flavors,
Yeah, that's right.
um, to get some sort of frame of reference so that they can make sure it's consistent every time. How do you teach them that this is what it's supposed to taste
Right.
like?
I mean, just repetition and just being with them, cooking with them. But a good example of that is like paella, right? We
Uh,
we make our paellas fresh. That's why sometimes it will take up to 20 minutes, or if
I heard
we're
you make the best pie. I haven't had it, but
oh,
someone said. Someone said.
I mean, we try to really do it
Yeah.
the right way because
What's the right way?
the right way is using the right rice,
Which is?
bomba rice,
Yeah.
right? And it's funny because I've had a lot of people from Valencia who go to El Raval, and I always tell them if they're there, I always tell them this is not a paella, it's arroz con cosas, right? Which is rice with stuff, with things, right? Because that's how they see this. Like the paella is in Valencia, you can only make it there, and I respect that. So I would tell them that this is how I make my rice. I'm still very respectful of obviously the ingredients that I use. It's from Valencia. It's wombo rice, short grain rice that could absorb like 3 times the amount of broth, right? That's why we use that. Having a very good broth, using amazing saffron, right, from Spain too. Having the right kind of sofrito, right?
What's the right kind of sofrito? Like, can you walk us through the process of making your sofrito?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I use obviously like ripe vegetables, so onions, red bell peppers, garlic, tomatoes, and I love using Marfa tomato for my sofrito. And we cook it down for 5-6 hours until it's ready. It takes a long time to, and obviously like Ñora peppers are basically the peppers that they use to make pimienton, right? Paprika, Spanish paprika.
So you're cooking it slow and low,
Slow and
like
low.
rondo or something
Yes,
like that? Yeah.
exactly. And you always have to watch it, you know? That's why my prep in an hour of it's insane sometimes.
So you have this huge respect for the tradition of cooking. If you mentioned stocks earlier at Robuchon, and then you mentioned how you have to make sure, or sauces, and then you also mentioned you have to have a great stock when you're making the paella.
That's right.
What is your process?
So let's just take, for example, the paella de marisco. It's our bestseller, right? So we use all the scrap. We use a lot of shrimp at El Raval.
You say shrimp?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we have gambas al ajillo that, people just love it, right? And so we have to peel and, vein those every day, basically. So we use all the scraps. And we also use like lobster heads because we have a lobster paella on the menu too. So we use all of that, right? Roast it, with mirepoix, and then cook it down for, I would say, 3 hours until the flavors are there. And then we blend that.
Shells and all.
Yeah, so we blend that and then we strain it, right?
It's funny. I don't know what I was doing the other day, and I think I was talking to another chef, and I was like, do you remember when we used to blend the shells and everything and strain it out for sauces and soups like that? Because I noticed a lot of people don't do that anymore. I was thinking, was I crazy and only working in kitchens that did that? Or, and like I learned a habit that you shouldn't do. But I was like, I could swear that everyone would blend their shells.
Yes.
Lobster shells, shrimp shells.
Absolutely, because that's the body of that's why it has body and protein, right? Like the volume of otherwise it's just going to be like a thin stock, right?
Well, I see a lot of people these days just straining that out and just thickening it. Like they're not blending the shells anymore.
Old school way.
Old school, right? Cooking when when you didn't have everything. We used to thicken our bisques with rice.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard of that technique.
Yeah, we would throw the rice in there too. Yeah, I love shellfish stock. Anyway, sorry.
And that's one thing that you can't like replicate. Like otherwise, how are you going to get that flavor from like those pre-made sauces? Like
you can't.
You can't, right?
You can't.
You can really taste it. And I feel like I've done that enough, like the foundation of a good paella. So now I can put my flavors in, right? Because I like, okay, this is how it's done, the traditional way, but let me put my touch or my twist on it, right? So for example, the marisco, we finished that with a little bit of a moqueca, which is a Brazilian, seafood stew, just for some creaminess and for some, to basically like give it a lift, right? We finish it with aioli as well. Traditional as can be. It's just eggs, egg yolk, good Spanish olive oil and garlic on the side. And obviously like fresh, Gulf seafood. If we can get it, like the shrimp, for example, we get it from here. Mussels obviously are from PI, and crab and whatever else, scallops. We put some scallops in there too. So
how has congratulations. I kind of know the answer. I'm kind of leading you to talk about yourself, but how has the Austin community been receptive of your restaurants? Now, I already know the answer because I've seen you, best restaurant coming up, Michelin recommended. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
But how's it been?
Well, it's been nothing but joy, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm super grateful for the support that we've been getting, right? And I always tell that, I'm super grateful, especially like at El Raval, we're approaching our 3rd-year anniversary.
Mhm.
And I would say like 50% of our base are repeat guests. So I mean, I love that because like in Europe, like my first restaurant in Barcelona, that's how we roll, right? We cook for the locals, for the people around us, right?
Mhm.
That's our lunch business. Like you would see the same faces over and over again. And that's how I actually had to come up with a different menu every day just so for them to be not, like I don't want to bore them with the same things over and over again. So I kind of have to cook something for them every day.
Yeah.
And I feel that here too. Like you see familiar faces, people getting engaged and then ending up choosing us for their wedding reception. So it's like being a part of we are a part of the community and we find ways to really like give back when we can, right? But it's an amazing journey. So
I want to, change subjects a little bit because you have a very interesting background in finance, and you are now you have 2 restaurants. And for a lot of people that listen to the podcast, a lot of times they're thinking about starting their own restaurant. And one of the more difficult things is a lot of people have the idea that this is what I want to do, but then they get stuck because they don't know how to move on to the next step. They don't know how to negotiate a lease. They don't know what they should be looking at. You have the 2 restaurants now, but you've had other restaurants before, and you have a background in finance. So if we were looking at opening up a restaurant, let's a hypothetical restaurant,
Sure.
imaginary restaurant that we're going to help people with, what are some of the things that we should advise people from a financial side? Number one, like, okay, how are we going to raise the capital?
Sure.
What's the best way to do that? How should we structure an investment deal if we're looking at investors for payback? What should that be based off of? Is it gross sales, net sales, EBITDA, whatever the case
Sure.
may be? I know that's a lot I just threw at you, so I'm going to let you, with your finance background, take the wheel. You know how to cook. That's not the problem. The problem is getting your team to do what you want, when you want it. That's leadership. My book, Culinary Leadership Fundamentals, breaks down exactly how to run a kitchen without losing your mind. Stop yelling, start leading. Get the book at chefspsa.com.
Well, first of all, if I'm opening a restaurant right now, well, I've always done this anyway, right? I would look for a second gen space, right? Second generation restaurant. That means I wouldn't have to put up for build out costs because God knows how. That's just a big barrier now, to open a restaurant. It would cost you millions now. And if you find a space that's second gen, make sure you negotiate with the current tenants if they can even like do an owner financing in such a way that you could probably pay them in terms, right? Whether that's
Explain that a little bit, because owner financing is something that I don't think anyone's talked about on this show.
Okay.
And so that might be a completely foreign concept.
Sure.
So can you explain what owner
Of course,
financing
yeah.
is?
So owner financing is just asking the current owners of the restaurant that you want to acquire, right, to basically finance you. So instead of getting the money from a bank, as a loan, you basically tell them, okay, I'm going to buy your restaurant for X amount. Give me a payment plan and I'll pay you monthly, or every quarter, until we complete I'll give you a deposit, but obviously like I'll pay this over a period of time. And if you can do that, great. So I don't have to ask the bank for capital. You still have to probably ask the bank or friends and family for capital because you have to, basically like redesign the space, do branding, working capital and all of that. And that's another thing too. Like I think as a restaurant, having enough capital is really like the key. You don't want to go in undercapitalized.
What is enough capital? What would be enough capital that you would advise someone on?
I would say like you have to do your pro forma, right? And that's your cost, your labor cost, your ingredient cost, your rent, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have like 2 months to 3 months of that, I would say that's that's good. Some people advise you to do like 6 months, which is, I think that's a lot, to be honest. But that's just give you like the security that, okay, if this month, turns out to be really slow, I'll be open the next month, right? But obviously, like, I hope that, you're doing something too to like really help you. And that's why you really need to take into account like marketing, right? PR, now Instagram ads, all of this, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So those are really important. And no one tells you these things when you open a restaurant. They always tell you that, okay, location, 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 and you have to have good food. And then what, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think you have to have a very good service team that would deliver, especially for chef owners, because I feel like we're really focused in the back of house, your food. I'm sure like a lot of chefs can deliver just, on the food alone. But like, you have to like look at this in such a way that it's a whole package, right? It's the service. It's your beverage, right? Your cocktail program, your wine program, your NA program, all of that. You know what I mean? And it's a lot of moving parts.
So you're just to recap, second gen space, owner financing if possible.
If possible.
If possible, have enough operating capital for a few months.
Sure.
Now, if you are seeking investors and you have to raise capital, what sort of deal are you trying to structure with investors to pay them back?
So I always feel that if it's the first project, always go for friends and family, right? Because these are the people who care most about your success, right? Like they would rally for you, right? They want you to be successful. And obviously they want their money back, right? I mean, as far as the terms, I would say like there are like a million ways to structure a deal, right? You could give them like a benefit, for example, like, okay, I can give you food credit every month, that's part of your, that's part of the perk of like investing with us. Or you could come up with like the terms like, okay, we can work on an interest rate that's really friendly, that's not a floating rate, especially now that interest rates are, well, they're going down, but like still they're high, right? So you can talk them into that. And I think just being upfront and like telling them that, hey, if this works, there should be an upside for you too, right?
Yeah.
Whether that's profit sharing, whether that's, and I feel that it's very important to do it net, right? Like profit, right? And not to give up the house by giving them gross sales.
Right. I'm thinking about like interest rates and cost of capital and like when is a good time, right? When is a good time to borrow that money?
And there are also other in-kind is one of those, right? So they provide capital and then you give them back credits, or I'm sure that it's not the only company that does it, but we've worked with them before, and it gets expensive if you think about it, because it's a lot of food credit, and you can argue that it's your COGS, but obviously like it's your rent too, it's your labor, so you have to take in.
And then there's ways to structure licensing and leases.
That's right.
I mean, do you have any general thoughts on if you were going to get a licensing agreement, or because a lot of times hotels and things like that will you're in a hotel, you don't have to talk about that actually, but for people that sometimes look at a licensing deal, what sort of things would you advise someone without getting too granular and obviously sharing details of your deal?
I think the number one advice is get you a great lawyer, right?
Yeah. Do you have a great lawyer?
Yeah, I do actually. Because someone actually told me this, that you don't look for a cheap neurosurgeon, right? Like if you're gonna have a surgery, like you want the best, right?
Right. You're
not gonna look for who's the cheapest one out there. I think like for lawyers, it should be the same, because these are the problems that you avoid in the future, right? If you have a good agreement and structure in the first place, then you would you would have something to protect you, right?
Mhm.
Because that's the thing too. Like, you don't really need this when everything is working well, right? You need them when things don't go
Right.
right,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yes, that's what the prenum's for, right?
Exactly.
Now, looking at it from the opposite end of your career, when you were in finance, what would you be looking for if you were the financer when someone's coming to you with a business plan to make sure that it's going to receive funding?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. Well, I would say that invest in people, right? And not ideas, right? I want to see the person's track record, right? Uh, how are they, right? Because it's sometimes like being a great chef does not really translate to being a good entrepreneur. Those are two different things, right?
Yeah.
Is this person entrepreneurial? You know, like, because you could work for someone and still be a very good entrepreneur by like, you know, looking at cost every day, like finding ways to like add revenue to the business and treat it like your own business, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you can really show that you have that track record and you're willing to really do what it takes, and it's not easy, you know, I've you know, I can tell it's not.
Right.
You give up a lot. You give up a lot of time, you know, your relationships, and it's very you know, draining too. But if you're willing to really do what it takes to succeed and make it work, then yeah, I'll say yes.
So, yeah, and thank you for sharing all that. That's fascinating. A lot of people that listen to the show, work in all, obviously, I don't know who listens to the show, but a lot of chefs want to open restaurants. A lot of chefs have closed restaurants. A lot of chefs, sometimes need to hear that one thing where the light bulb goes off. And you've shared a lot of really great knowledge today. So I appreciate that. What do you do to unwind? Like, I'll tell you what I do. I mean, I'm pretty boring. Like, I smoke cigars and drink whiskey. I'm not that, like, people like, what do you do? Like, I smoke a cigar. Shout out to Escobar cigars. That's the ones I like.
Great.
And then I'll drink like an old fashioned. I love talking. Like, I get paid to talk. I love to just sit down and talk to my chef friends. What do you do to unwind? Like, what do you like? Do you like wine or?
Yeah, I do love wine. So I'm very passionate about wines. And it's funny because now that I think about it, what really got me into wines was when I was working at Robuchon. There was this, I remember him, he was a sommelier, and he would always like give me like, you know, sniff this or taste this, you know, and it was like a glass of a beautiful Burgundy. And that's what got me into Burgundy. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so special, you know?
Do you like Texas wine?
I've had some good
You had some
Texas
good
wines,
yeah.
you know, and I really respect the way that they represent the terroir and what Texas could offer. It's not easy, right? But I think there are a lot of winemakers out there that's doing great for what we have here, you know.
Yeah. From a financial strategy, I do like wine, especially obviously in restaurants, because you can have a table that no matter how much you want them to spend, they might cap out at $250 because
Sure.
that's as much as they're going to eat. But once you add wine, it's like all of a sudden that $250 check can maybe go up to $1,000 or beyond.
Absolutely.
Right? Wine is the one thing that could do that, and it's low effort.
Yeah.
Right. Besides storage, it appreciates a lot of times. So it's good. You know, in the finance world, I guess maybe that's like an appreciating asset sometimes.
I never thought of it that way, but I love that.
Yeah. Right, because I mean, you have all the perishable assets.
That's right.
You know, the cilantro in the cooler.
Yes.
You know,
Absolutely.
you could buy $1,000 worth of cilantro, $1,000 worth of wine.
True.
Wine will last.
That's why running a bar is so much easier than running a restaurant, right? Yeah. Like, and it takes like, obviously now there are amazing cocktail bars out there, right? Like, but it technically, like, you don't really need a lot of people to run a bar, right? If you think about it, because like you said, low effort, right? You don't need to, you need to prep maybe.
You got to know though. But one of the things that you have to know is, yes, it's low effort, but if you want to make that sale, you better know, you got to know your shit when it comes to wine. You know your shit.
I mean, I try to.
You're being modest. You're being modest. What are some of your studies with wine?
Well, I have a level 3 in WSET, so it requires a lot.
A little bit.
It requires a lot of discipline, I guess, and but I'm fascinated by it. I love the process. I love learning about different places, right? And how geology, farming could affect everything. It is like, if you
What do you
think
mean?
about it,
Yeah, expand.
well, there are a lot of factors that affect like how a, you know, a wine can be, right? And could evolve into, right? So it's not just about, obviously, the climate is one, the soil, human factor is another one, how you pick up the grapes from pressing them with stems, with skin, or, like everything is like a factor, right? And obviously, like, how do you vinify them? Do you put them in a stainless steel and oak, or, like, there's a million ways to basically make wine, right? And do you drink it now? Do you wait for a couple of years to, really appreciate it? And it's those things that really fascinates me. And it is such an art, but it's also obviously like a science, right? And I feel like it's cooking, but it's harder than cooking, because where else can you find something where you make the product now and then you will have to wait for like a year, or even sometimes years,
That's the normal fermentation lab.
to
I'm just
to number one, to sell, right, or to enjoy, right? That's crazy,
Yeah,
right? If you
yeah.
think about it, it takes a little. You have to be crazy to do it, especially in this day and age, right? So, and I just admire that. I love it.
Well, before we wrap up, I like to give people my wrap up questions. So, the first one is, if you had four chefs on the Mount Rushmore of chefs, so if you had to name four,
Okay.
who would be on there for you?
Wow, that's a great question. I would say Vitor from Echevarri, because I know that he can start a fire anywhere. He'll just probably grab some wood from, I don't know where, but like he could start a fire and hunt maybe, and make a great meal. Who else? I would say Kike da Costa is another one. He's a Spanish chef. He is an amazing chef because he loves to really feature Valencia. He's a chef from Valencia. He has a 3 Michelin star, so he's famous in his region. Uh, and then the next one would be David Munoz from Stricho de Bercho. His creativity is like, whoa.
Sure,
He
yeah.
also loves to travel, and this is the kind of chef that I was talking about. Like, like, they know their shit, right? I'm sorry if I have to say
You
that,
can
but
cuss.
like,
I mean, I've toned it down for you.
okay.
There's an explicit sticker on the podcast.
But like, these are some of the chefs who really know what they're doing, but chooses to do, like crazy things, like what he's doing, like putting together different flavors and still making it work and making it an amazing dish, right? He's known for that. And that's one thing that I really, really admire. And maybe the last one would be Dominique Crenn.
Yeah.
I love her elegance, the simplicity, right? And yet it's so refined.
Yeah.
That's
a
one thing
good
that I
list.
really.
That's a great list. That's a great list. In your kitchen, when you're seasoning, what is your all-purpose salt that you use? Is it what do you use? Like, if you're on the salt station here.
My cooks would know this, or anyone that I work with, mild and salt. Like, I could be the ambassador for mild and salt, because
For everything.
not for everything though, but mostly to basically, for sauces, for example, I use mild and salt. For finishing, obviously, I use it.
Why for sauces?
Because I feel like it's not too, like, super salty. The flavor is there, but it's refined, right? I just love it that way. I sometimes use fleur de sel, because that's what I learned in Robuchon. They use that, right? And here sometimes I can't find it, so I use mild and salt. But it's those two sauces. Although, or salt. I mean, although I love some artisanal salts. I recently got some from the Philippines, and they're great. They're not easy to find. Someone gave it to me because they were there, and they just happened to have some. I've cooked with sal de Ibiza as well, like Ibiza, like in Spain. Obviously, like they have like salt pads, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's amazing, right? Because
you notice a difference?
yeah,
Yeah. Interesting. If
I'll give you some.
yeah, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna come see you. I think the last question I would ask you is where can people find you if they want to try your food and if they want to follow along?
Yeah, so we are at El Raval. It's a Spanish tapas bar. We're located in on South Lamar. So yeah, come see us there. And the other restaurant is at East Street, 11th Street. It's called Siti. It's a Southeast Asian restaurant. So yeah,
Well, thank you so much. This was fun.
absolutely.
I appreciate you being here and sharing your wild story.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been fun.
You're welcome.
And you made it super nice for me. I didn't feel that we were, on a Fatcast.
All right, that's the show. If you liked it, make sure you leave 5 stars, nothing less than 5 stars. If you want more Chefs PSA, go to chefspsa.com. Get yourself some books, get yourself some merch, including Culinary Leadership Fundamentals and the Line Cook Survival Manual. If you want early access to episodes, you can get them on Spotify and Substack by becoming a paid member. The link is in the notes. We'll see you next week. Hit the porno music.
No, it's Andre in the kitchen, mixing, dropping chef knowledge, no fiction, stirring up the beats, heating up the session. Listen close, class is in session.